And look, I don't want to be self-indulgent here, but I've spent almost my entire broadcasting life on air and off air fighting for farmers. I know the scene. My old man was one. Then as now, they were treated like rubbish. Farmers put the food on the table, but that's about where our understanding ends for politicians anyway. The public are wonderful. They donate money in drought and bushfire, but the farmers don't see it. Where does it go? Well, there's a political party called the National Party. The farmer was once its constituency. There's now no one so forgotten by the national farmer as the farmer. Like every industry, farmers fund a bloated bureaucracy. What do? Well, as my old man would say, bugger all. There's a story today which is the guts of the problem in the bush. Legitimate criticism that the New South Wales Environment and Energy Minister Matt Kean is choosing environmental concerns over the interests of farmers and agriculture. But here's the rub. There is an interim chief executive of the New South Wales Irrigators Council, a woman by the name of Claire Miller. She wrote to Gladys Berejiklian last week. She rightly argues that water and agriculture were being treated by the Berejiklian government as an environmental problem. Well, I asked Claire Miller to come onto this program tonight. She's not available. Farmers to whom I've spoken are livid. They struggle to get a voice. She's a paid voice at a time when farmers have nothing, and she's lost a voice. There was a meeting with irrigators on July 1. New South Wales Minister Kean, as I understand it, told the irrigators he was appointed by the Premier to represent energy and environment stakeholders, and he left the meeting. Here's a minister in government and farmers aren't amongst his stakeholders, promoting the dumb view that farmers and the environment are mutually exclusive. Let me tell you something. The greatest environmentalists in this country are farmers. That's how the land has been passed on from generation to generation to generation. Magnificently productive. The land's been protected lovingly by the farmer. Claire Miller is meant to represent these people. Irrigated water is a massive issue. Yet the bulk of what should be available to farmers in this country is owned by massive private sector interests who don't own one handful of land. Who would have thought we'd come to this? So we make farmers pay for water, then we take it from them for environmental flows. No compensation. And we wonder why we have to put imported food on the table. And you've got a bloke like Matt Kean, who would never have been inside a farm gate. The closest he would have been to anything farming would be a green garden hose lying idle in his Hornsby backyard, telling farmers that he wants to see the environment in a better state than the way we inherited it. I could not possibly recommend anyone vote for a person with such warped, unproductive and insulting views. And Claire Miller, if you're supposed to be representing irrigators, hand in your ticket. There has to be someone more responsive to the important opportunity you were given to tell the nation a disturbing story of farmers being abandoned. You've neglected the opportunity. Well, a lady from the bush with a massive following because she's smart and she talks sense and she knows her stuff, and she goes by the name of Peter Credlin. Peter, lovely to have you always, eh?
Delighted to be here. Hey, don't you look debonair tonight? little white collar and the blue shirt. Very handsome.
Very handsome. Thank you. What do you make of this?
Now, I looked into this Claire Miller, and I found this very interesting. Today in the Moree paper, you know, this whole debate, Helen Dalton, the independent shooter fisher farmer in the New South Wales Parliament, wants to see disclosure and transparency about who owns what in terms of water. Well, Miller's in the paper in Moree saying she backs the MPs having to disclose their rights, but she thinks under privacy concerns, no one else's ownership of water needs to be disclosed. Now, I think that's wrong. I think most Australians would love to know who owns our water.
Absolutely. Listen, we'll deal with her later, but before, I want to talk to you about this protest mob. We have a very disturbing story here from Linda, Peter, who does want to talk. Linda and her daughter are currently being held in quarantine in Sydney. They just returned from America. Linda travelled on an exemption to collect her daughter, who suffered alone after a terrible breakdown in a violent and turbulent marriage. I understand the daughter is suffering from diminishing mental health. Linda herself is suffering from ongoing kidney failure. But here's the rub. Linda's desperate to talk to someone about, quote, the horrendous treatment she's receiving in quarantine. I understand Linda is locked in a room facing a brick wall with no access to fresh air. She and her daughter have asked for access to fresh air. She's been told to be quiet, shut up, put up with what she's got. As I understand it, she's in a very small room and she and the daughter have to share a bed. They weren't given separate beds. I know resources are stretched, but in Australia there must be certain entitlements which can't be compromised. Linda's on the line via Skype. Linda, good evening to you. You are an Australian taxpayer. you knew you'd have to be quarantined, but I guess you didn't think you'd be treated like this.
No, correct. Yeah, I just thought that we would be given a basic right of fresh air every day.
You were told if you wanted fresh air, you could pay $400 a night per person.
Correct. Yeah, when we arrived, they said if you want a balcony, you pay $400 a night and you could be given that.
And you came from North Dakota. There are no hotspots there, and you've worn masks all the time, as was required in North Dakota. How long have you been in that room?
We've been here. We got here Saturday night, the 25th.
And you and your daughter share a bed?
Correct. Yep, we're sharing a bed. They would not give us a room with 2 beds in it.
Peter, what do you make of this?
You know, she comes back to Australia. She's an Australian. She's in quarantine in New South Wales. Yet in Victoria, we know there's nearly 4,000 people that are tested positive. We know they're positive, not might be positive. We know they're positive. They're at home, and as confirmed by the Chief Medical Officer today in Victoria, if you haven't got a back garden, you need fresh air. He says it's a human right. That's his words, not mine. You're allowed to go outside, you're allowed to go into the park, knowingly being positive with this virus, yet this woman's locked up in Sydney and can't go outside. It makes no sense.
Linda, what about linen and towels and so on?
No, nothing's been changed at all. We've had no communication with anyone. If we ring for anything, we're usually just told the basics.
Okay, yeah, Linda, I'll speak to somebody off air, so we'll be in touch with you. Try to hang in. Peter's absolutely right. The things that you're complaining about, you are entitled to, I have to say. So hang in there and we'll talk to you off air. Peter, just back to you. The total number of people in Victoria not linked to a known cluster is now over 3,200. New South Wales have tracked down the close contacts of confirmed cases each day. Victoria can't deal, allegedly, with this record-breaking caseload. What do you make of what's happening?
Well, it's just a calamity of failures. I call it systemic failure, Alan. There isn't just one problem. If we thought it was just the hotel quarantine, which we think is how it got out into Victoria, that'd be one thing. It's that, these contact tracing failures. We've now got this crisis in aged care. We know there's about 4,000 cases, active cases in Victoria. This COVID app, $60 million was spent by taxpayers, all run by that brains trust, that Stuart Robert, the federal MP, who I wouldn't feed, to be honest. He's put this out there in the marketplace. I had experts on tonight. These apps are working overseas. They're not working in Australia. It's found 0 cases, 0 contact cases in Victoria. It's a crime. It's an absolute crime.
Listen,
and he knocks back the ADF.
Yeah.
Why would you knock back the army?
I know. And 1,000 of them they're offered. Knock them back to give the jobs to Labor mates in Victoria. Hopefully the public will see through this. Just before we go, Peter, the ABC doing a job on Falun Gong. Now, for our viewers who don't understand, Falun Gong have long been in opposition to the oppression in China and have opposed the oppression in China. They're supportive of Donald Trump because Donald Trump has taken a tough attitude to China. The ABC have then run an awful story about the Falun Gong, calling them a dangerous cult and so on. So the Chinese Communist press think the ABC are fantastic. In fact, if I can quote, it took 21 years for Australia's national media to confront and expose the serious mental and health damage caused by the Falun Gong evil cult to its citizens for the first time. This is on the website of the Chinese Communist Party main media outlet, where the ABC are heroes.
Maybe the ABC just doesn't want to be hacked by the Chinese. Maybe that's why they've pushed this barrow. I've dealt with Falun Gong for many years in government. I don't believe what the ABC are putting out. I think they, in many cases, have helped spread the word about what's been going on, particularly in prisons, these claims of organ stealing. Obviously, some of the things we know in relation to the Uyghurs and others. I think this is dangerous territory for the national broadcaster.
For a national broadcaster to be an apologist for the Chinese Communist Party, Peter, look, sell the thing. If they're any good, make it like we are. Pay TV. You've got to pay to watch. If they're any good, they'll get a view. I suspect not many people would be prepared to pay up. You're looking sensational. Thank you for being with us.
Says you. Says you. Delighted, as always.
See you next week. There she is. We love it.
Bye-bye.
Peter Credlin.